Hello everyone and welcome to another episode talking geeky stuff with me, Tenshi. And it's another video about comic artists. This time is Travis Charest. I hope I pronounced that right. And with Travis, he was a little bit after Jim Lee, McFarlane, Arthur Adams, Mark Silvestri. I first got introduced to his artwork when he did a special for Jim Lee Wildcats, 1993 if I remember correctly. He did a special for that. Then he did like little side stories like 1 to 3, and then I thought, okay, this artwork was pretty good, because at that time when Jim Lee opened up Image Comics, Wildstorm Studios and so on, McFarlane doing his stuff over there, Silvestri doing his stuff over there, Rob Liefeld doing stuff over there as well. They were employing a lot of artists that had very similar styles, and Jim Lee had a lot of I don't want to call them clones, but a lot of the artists that he took under his studio were kind of like inspired by his artwork. It's the same thing as when you look at some of Todd McFarlane artists that he took under, like Greg Capullo had a little similar style to his and so on. And in Wildstorm Studios at the time, run by Jim Lee, he had a lot of artists, good artists, but they were very Jim Lee-esque. Some of them were too close to Jim Lee, which were great artists, don't get me wrong. But when Travis came, I was like, oh, okay, he had a little bit of Jim Lee in him, not as dynamic and so on. And I noticed that out of all the upcoming artists that Jim Lee employed, I noticed his artwork. I noticed that he does a lot of panels, very dynamic. Sometimes, he's got a good way of storytelling. So I introduced to him. And then, of course, later on, when Jim Lee slowly, I won't say retired from penciling, he became, the CEO, the boss of his own company. So he had to oversee a lot more things about that. That also at the same time, and then Travis took over the regular Wildcat series. It was a pretty good run when he took over, because for a year you had a Travis who did fantastic artwork, and you had Alan Moore, one of the greatest comic writers. He took over for a year, and then that time Wildcats took a slightly darker tone to it. Because my only criticism about Wildcats, which I still love, I haven't read it for a long time, I'm not even sure if it's going, I need to get back into it, was the first few issues. Jim Lee's art was fantastic, don't get me wrong. I felt it was too much like X-Men. No, understandable, Jim Lee came from X-Men, so he had that to it. But, following the year or two after, when Travis took over, you had Alan Moore who took over the writing. And that 12 months was fantastic. If you had to read a Wildcats, I'll definitely, and you don't want to read the beginning bit, that's fine. I would probably recommend just get I think there's a paperback now of Travis and Alan Moore's run. Fantastic work. And I love the way that the story got split in two. You had two teams. I won't tell you the whole story. You had to but at the same time, I would say get the Jim Lee one as well. So you can understand why Alan Moore's story makes more sense that way. And then he kind of disappeared for a little while. And then after he left and Alan Moore left, I can't remember the writer and artist that took over. Travis went out to do other things. He did a lot of covers and so on like that. He was one of the best cover artists, I would say. And then his artwork slowly, I tell you when his artwork really become his own, become less Jim Lee, but much more Travis, when Wildcats kind of revamped itself. You got, I think the writer was Joe Casey, and Travis became the main artist for that. They changed the logo of Wildcats. The team was split up, things like that. He had his much more mature tone because they were dropping F-bombs. they were using F words here and there, so very adult content, and the story is really good. Joe Casey is a great writer. I think it's Joe Casey anyway, and Travis was the main artist for that. And the main thing about what I loved about it is, how do you say, the details of the story. As you can see, some of the images here on your left hand side, or sorry, on your right hand side, you see some of the artwork in black and white. Of course, it was color in the comics, but searching for a lot of his art, especially a lot of the Jim Wildcats covers, change. As you can see at the top, you can see the first on your left hand side, that was when he did Wildcats just after Jim Lee. And then on your right hand side, when you see the logo change, that is when Travis, even Scott Lobdell, he came on and written a few issues as well. But Casey and Travis, that run was great as well. And then you can see the artwork slowly kind of distance itself from Jim Lee and that kind of tone, and you had his style. I would still say, as a comic book artist, Jim Lee is still one of the greatest, probably the greatest. He has very dynamic and very heroic poses and so on. Travis is a good, more detailed artwork. Later on, you will see how his art evolved. Very evolved. He's more like an artist. He so happens to be into comics, where Jim Lee is more of a comic artist, and an artist maybe second, where Travis is like an artist, then a comic artist, kind of reverse sort of thing. And he also has very different styles as well. Like I mentioned, he starts off very Jim Lee-esque, then slowly he evolves slightly. And then you look at some of his Marvel work. He tries to go back to like the classic look as well, which is great. And also one of my favorite issues when Wildcats and X-Men crossed over. There was a few separate issues, and the one I love was X-Men Wildcats. You can see on the right hand side is with Wolverine and Zealot. I think it's Zealot, and you can see by the images here, just the artwork. One of the reasons why when he did the new Wildcats, when they kind of revamped it, instead of releasing every month, it was every 2 months, because he spent so much time on detail, as you can see by the comic panels. What he used to do is, like an artist, get like a roughly about A3 size of paper, and they start designing the layout, the drawings, where Travis would sometimes, per panel, is the size of the comic, like size of an A3 paper. So each panel, though, he spent so much time, because he would draw them full size and then shrink them down into panels. That's how he constructed some of his pages. That is why with the second one of Wildcats, instead of a monthly release, they released 2 months. It got to a point when even 2 months wasn't enough, because sometimes they were delayed to 3 months. And you can clearly see some of his artwork has slowly changed, become cleaner, not as many lines like cross hatching and so on. And also he did a lot of his own colors. Like if you looked at X-Men Wildcats, it was kind of like black and white with certain tones of greys and yellows and so on. Yeah, so look at some of the artwork here. You got a mixture, like I said, you got that comic book artist of Jim Lee-esque, and then evolved into slightly cleaner look. And then you got to look at some of his Marvel characters like Captain America. He gave you that really 1950s look. And of course, and if you look at some of his more modern work, like the top panels, he has that really pop art, really pop art, that is very quite trendy recently, very stylized and very subtle as well. But at the same time, he can still draw pretty frantic. He does a pretty good Wolverine, as you can see. And you look at some of his panels, and you look at the Batman drawing, very 1960s Batman look. So he can mix it up. He can mix it up to the comic artists of the 90s all the way to now, where it's kind of really pop art. I mean, look at his art is so versatile. You look at the way he does Star Wars, and look at the way he does Superman. Very Christopher Reeves. So he's one of those artists where I really do like. I mean, look at some of his early drawings at the top here. You can see how he does a lot of cross hatching, and even the bottom one there, very comic style. That's why I call it the Jim Lee days. But slowly he evolved into something a bit different. I would say that when it comes down to females, he does really good females. He does really good everyone, really stylistic styles. But if you come down to, say, how do you say it without being too vulgar, like sexy and so on. I mean, he can draw sexy women, of course, you can clearly see, but not as good as Jim Lee, and not as good as another artist, which I will focus on more if you're into comics. This artist did Gen 13 back then. His name was J. Scott Campbell. He is probably one of the best female pencilers, which I'll make a video of him later on. But if you haven't read some of his books or comics, definitely have a check out his artwork. And also, like I said, if you want to go back and read some Wildcats, you can download it. Download the first wave, which is Jim Lee. I mean, just Jim Lee's artwork, brilliant. It's actually pretty decent as well. If you're a big fan of the X-Men in the 90s, you'll kind of like that. But also check out his run for 1 year run. I think you can get in book form where he partnered with Alan Moore. That was a really good run for Wildcats. And of course, check out his run with Scott Lobdell and Joe Casey, where the content become mature because there's lots of swear words and so on. And that's where his artwork really evolved. I think it's from Wildcats 50 onwards when they revamped it. That's when his artwork really changed to the distinct style that he has now. So definitely check his artwork out. As you can clearly see on this screen here, on the bottom right, you can see I think the character is called Voodoo, very Jim Lee-esque, and then you look at the top, you see how it evolved a lot. But anyway, definitely check his work out. He's one of the best artists, one of the newer artists that I liked after, the Jim Lees, the McFarlanes, and so on. So definitely check him out. I have to say thank you for checking this video out, and please give this video a like, and please consider subscribing to hear me talk more about geeky stuff. I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are in the world. Until next time, goodbye. Oh, and please stay safe.